Welcome to the How to Respond to Audit Recommendations training. I'm Jesus Baldovinos from Internal Audit. Although sometimes comprehensive and seemingly overwhelming, the audit response can be accomplished successfully. This training offers a wide variety of points and options for success. Departments should consider these options when addressing all audit recommendations and systematically concentrate on any actions. If completed, the department and auditor are both in a win-win scenario whereby the department resolves root cause problems and the auditor has fewer repeat recommendations. There are some basic rules that can be established regarding writing a response to an audit recommendation. Some or all of these rules may apply depending upon the particular situation of the audit engagement. For example, if you agree with the audit recommendation, simply say so, then move on with a corrective action plan. Identify the individual responsible for the plan and the anticipated completion date. You can take more time to thoroughly resolve complex recommendations, but it's best to pledge an earlier completion date for simple issues. Show that you are committed to fixing the issue sooner rather than later. Someone in a high level should write the response. Writing a solid audit response is important because the auditors and executive management will hold business management accountable for delivering any control improvements they commit to. Personnel copied in the response should include high-level management. This shows that management at the university is aware of the issues and the commitments being made. Thank the auditors for being professional, providing insight or other appropriate remarks as warranted. This shows that management is receptive to the issues and is on board in taking corrective action. Also, keep in mind that in most instances, your audit will be performed by internal audit students and supervised by the internal audit manager. Internal audit students are in most cases learning as they perform their job, sometimes through trial and error. Monitoring progress, encouraging the internal audit students' growth, and ensuring the university is benefiting from the internal audit students' time and contribution are components of the students' experience here at Central. Always remember that you are writing the response to the auditor's management as well as clients. Do not assume that the person reading the report understands the context of the recommendation or your reply. Although it may be tempting to respond to a recommendation with indignation and defensiveness, but that approach doesn't do you much good. Yes, recommendations are public information and you want to protect your reputation, but graciously acknowledging the issue, accepting responsibility, and outlining a corrective plan all go much further in building a collaborative relationship with managers and earning public trust. A position of cooperation serves your department best. If the action item is going to take some time to implement, state what will be done in the interim to be compliant. Don't simply indicate that the actions will be taken in 6 months to correct the recommendation in which you are currently out of compliance, without addressing what you will do to be compliant from the current date until the corrections are implemented. If corrective actions have already taken place, indicate the following. Dates implemented. Add specific dates when the action took place, for example, effective September 6, 2019, or as of April 15, 2020, etc. This will help the auditor scope a timeline of events when following up to the recommendations 12 months later. Training performed. List the trainings and how the training relates to the recommendation. For example, we implemented professional development training for faculty over award management to help increase awareness about the issues related to sponsored program management. Updated policies and procedures. Indicate what was changed in your policies and procedures. For example, if the change relates to an update to your procurement procedures as a way to strengthen controls, indicate the specific update and reference chapter, paragraph, etc. Define how enhancements will prevent reoccurrence of the issue observed. Your corrective action plan should identify how the changes will prevent reoccurrence in the future and what remedial controls will be implemented in the interim. Explain what will be done to expand, enhance, or streamline the compliance system. Don't assume that the reader will understand this fact. Overall, your response should provide enough detail to satisfy anyone reading it that your plan is sound and specific. Describe how the department will monitor the progress and effectiveness of the corrective actions. Internal audit must conduct follow-up procedures in the next audit period, so be sure to document any corrective actions and steps taken during the year. Revise, revise, revise. Allow other people not directly involved with the audit to review and comment on the response. They may have insight on response wording that would assist in clarification or strengthening of points. The following are some suggestions to response strategies to avoid when responding to audit recommendations. When you disagree with the recommendation, proceed with caution. If you dispute it or offer the defense that no issues have historically been reported in previous audits, you raise a red flag. If you express disagreement, your auditor must respond with further explanation of the issue, essentially rebuting your statement, which may serve to strengthen the case for the issue and invite further regulatory scrutiny. No matter how frustrated you are with the audit process or its outcome, try to keep your interactions with the auditors and your responses businesslike. Your professional behavior will pay dividends when you interact with the auditors in the future. Each recommendation includes a process stage that allows you to clarify or remediate it and identify the laws, regulations, standards, or best practices that your department should better comply with. That occasion will be your chance to debate or express your opinion. In other words, your written response isn't the best place to argue the facts of an issue. Of course, there are times, though, when your disagreement is valid and substantiated. If this is the direction you choose to go with, make your case thoroughly and clearly, providing specific, solid evidence for your challenge to the issue. Be dispassionate, respectful, and matter-of-fact in your tone. The following are some examples of pathways to disaster to avoid when responding to audit recommendations. During the exit meeting or in the response, management argues every point in that the recommendations are not appropriate, or we have never had an issue with this point from other auditors. This is called a scorched earth policy and will ensure that the auditor has a strong message of noncompliance. Management states that the corrective actions being requested will put the department out of business or drive jobs to a foreign country. This type of response is a scare tactic that has been used for many years and has not proven to be the case. The rainforest or overwhelming response. This type of response includes massive amounts of data that is not warranted with the hopes that the receiver will be impressed with the work. This type of response sends an immediate warning signal to the auditor that issues are being glossed over. Management implements changes immediately. Either during the exit meeting or with a quick response, management indicates that all changes have been implemented for complex issues. If the issue is simple, great, not a problem. However, for complex issues, a rapid response indicates that the department has taken a knee-jerk reaction and implemented corrective actions without thinking of the root cause of the issue. The enigmatic response. The department indicates that actions are going to be taken, but does not address what these actions include. Such an example would include a response indicating that records were updated and nothing else, with no action to help explain when or how the records were updated. Promise without substance. Similar to the enigmatic response, this approach does not indicate any specifics. For instance, a deficiency was noted during the audit, that the review was not performed in a timely manner, and the management response indicates that the reviews will be carried out in a timely manner, without any specifics as to when or how it will take place. Not responding to the audit recommendation. You aren't required to respond, but your silence could be viewed as failing to take the audit process seriously and showing resistance to feedback. Some people may question your department's sense of stewardship, responsibility, and accountability. When an auditor issues a recommendation but does not receive a management response, the report must indicate that management was provided a reasonable time for response and state clearly that you elected not to comment. In such cases, oversight units may ask you why you chose not to provide a written response and inquire about what your department is doing to address the issue. If that happens, You've essentially deferred your response, and now you'll have to give it directly to a regulating body rather than the auditor, sparing yourself no effort in inviting further review. Not responding to an audit recommendation isn't recommended. The role of management cannot be understated in its importance with a successful audit outcome. The auditor must get the impression that management is informed of issues and is vested to resolve issues. Roles of management include hosting the inspection. Management is encouraged to be upfront. This will be the first impression that an auditor receives of how the department actually operates. If no one from management is available, or even attempts to participate in the audit, there is a lost opportunity to indicate that the department is willing to listen and learn from the experience of the auditor. Management does not have to be present during the entire audit, but should be there during the opening and to discuss any key issues. Roles of management should also include participating in the exit meeting and being aware of or participating in the management response. This approach will indicate that the department's management is accountable for decisions being made and actions taken. The most critical role of management after the audit is the commitment of resources to accomplish the task in the allotted time frame. In some instances, this could range from more money to more people. Audit recommendations are really about improvement, not judgment. A recommendation isn't a report card that details your department's demerits, and it's not a statement that says your management team is failing at its job. Recommendations are, in fact, essential byproducts of the audit process. They reveal helpful information you can use to protect your department from risk and tighten controls. The following are example scenarios of audit recommendations and how a good response compares to a response to avoid. In this first example, we have a scenario involving 12 transactions did not contain documented supervisory approvals. For this scenario, the following recommendation was issued. The transaction should be reviewed by a supervisor, and if possible, by a person independent of the function who is knowledgeable of the types of activities. In the next slide, we will relate back to best practices, including things to avoid when writing effective responses. Taking into account some of the basic rules for writing a response, a good response to consider is, we concur with the finding and agree with the auditor's recommendation. Since discovery of the control deficiency, the department has strengthened internal controls and have amended procedures to require approvals. A few of the basic rules applied into this response include, if you agree with the recommendation, simply say so, then move on to a corrective action plan, as is the case for amending procedures to require approvals. Notice the response includes a specific action, amended procedures to require approvals, as opposed to an enigmatic response with no action. What other basic rules could be added to this response? Perhaps thanking the auditor for the professional work, or being appreciative of the auditor's recommendation and look forward to the opportunity to correct the deficiency. A response strategy to avoid is a response such as, our department does not agree with this audit recommendation. We have never had an issue with this from other auditors in the past. Per best practices, be cautious when you disagree. By disputing the recommendation that no issues have historically been reported in previous audits, you raise a red flag. Remember that if you express disagreement, your auditor must respond with further explanation of the issue, essentially rebutting your statement, which may serve to strengthen the case for the issue and invite further regulatory scrutiny. Remember that each recommendation includes a process stage that allows you to clarify the laws, regulations, or standards that your department should better comply with. That occasion will be your chance to debate or express your opinion. In other words, your written response isn't the best place to argue the facts of an issue. In this second example, we have a scenario involving the department does not have written policies and procedures. For this scenario, the following recommendation was issued. The department should develop and document all of its significant business processes and make the policies and procedures available to all personnel. In addition, the department should ensure they are accurate, complete, and current at all times. The policy should be revised for changes in processes, and the changes should be communicated to all affected personnel immediately. In the next slide, we will relate back to best practices, including things to avoid when writing effective responses. For this scenario, a good response to consider is the following. We agree with the auditor's comments, and the following action will be taken to improve the situation. We will have each supervisor to document the policies and procedures for the respective processes by the end of winter quarter of 2020. We will then consolidate these documents into one user manual that will be available to all staff members in our website. Revisions to the user's manual will be made as needed to ensure the manual is current at all times, and staff will be advised of all revisions. A few of the basic rules applying to this response include: if you agree with the recommendation, simply say so, as is the case in the initial first sentence. Then move on to a corrective action plan, as is the case in the subsequent sentences. Notice the response is on par with the actual recommendation, where the actions correspond closely with each bullet item recommendation, as is the case for developing and documenting policies, making policies available to staff, revising policies for changes, which is particularly important when new systems are developed and implemented, or other organizational changes occur, ensuring policies are accurate at all times, and communicating changes to affected staff, which should be made immediately to ensure they are aware of any revisions to their daily duties and responsibilities. In doing so, you ensure that each bullet item recommendation is addressed within your response, which is a best practice. A response strategy to avoid is a response such as, all changes have been implemented. If you have already made corrections, decide if you will indicate that fact during the exit meeting. However, there is a concern that should be noted on this point. If the department has a knee-jerk reaction and implements corrective actions too quickly, the auditor may be concerned that you're reacting without truly evaluating the systematic nature of the observation. If the points are minor or easily rectified, you could make the comment that actions have already been implemented to correct the problem, but be cautious with this approach. Many questions can be raised, such as, how did you get to change the control implemented so quickly? Or, did you train personnel already? Or, did you evaluate all the systems? Taking this into account, a quick response that all changes have been implemented for complex issues such as this isn't recommended. A thoughtful written response to an audit recommendation shows that your department is open to constructive review, willing to take positive action to strengthen controls within your department, and strives to be a good steward of public resources and trust. This training was designed to help you identify the best course of corrective action, build a solid control environment, and effectively communicate your plans to auditors and members of the university. If you have questions, please contact Internal Audit at extension 1191 or at Barge Hall, room 311. Thank you for taking this training, and we will see you next time.